because we've got a lot to cover here. The advisory committee composition I mentioned before. It has to be a majority of consumers, and you can include disability or senior advocates. You can only have one county employee, but there can be a county employee on the advisory committee with the right to vote. And it can include providers. Actually, there's a mistake in here. I left out that it's required to have 2 providers on your advisory committee. What are your duties? What are your duties? I'm going to read to you from the Welfare and Institutions Code. I hope this isn't too boring, but this is really important stuff. You're supposed to provide ongoing advice and recommendations regarding in-home supportive services to the Board of Supervisors, any county department related to the delivery of IHSS, and the public authority governing body. Remember I said the public authority was separate from the county? You're separate from the public authority and from the Department of Social Services. So there's 3 separate entities here. What's the public authority duties? They have to operate a registry, investigate backgrounds, provide training. What's the county's duty? The county has to take into account on an ongoing basis your advice and recommendations before. I have before in italics. I want to emphasize it. Before making policy and funding decisions about the IHSS program. That is because, as Janet said, nothing about us without us. The intent of the legislature here was to say, have a conversation with the advisory committee when you're going to make policy and funding decisions. And do it beforehand. Don't just advise them that it's already happened. That's powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff. That's why I wanted to quote it. Okay, I've got a list of things here. Another thing folks say is, well, we don't do that in this county. We don't spend our advisory committee money that way. You can't do that. I've listed here some things that the public funds can be used for, which are taken from a case, a California case. And basically, you can lobby for public funds. Let me make it simple so I can get going here. There's certain things you can't use public funds for. And the big one is you can't attempt to influence the action of voters for or against the qualification of a passage of a ballot measure. There's one here that says you can't use it for promotional materials, but all of the advisory committees who use the money, they use it for education. It's different than promotion. Just tell you a little bit about SECA. We're a regular 501c3. We're approved by the Internal Revenue Service as a charitable organization. Sometimes folks wonder if my advisory committee is subject to the Brown Act. What about SECA? Is SECA subject to the Brown Act? No, because it's an individual corporation. SECA is not a public entity that is subject to the Brown Act. The huge thing about SECA is what we're doing right now, is education. We've got 4 regions: Northern, Mountain Valley, Central, and Southern. Pretty much run by an executive committee. Those are the folks that take the day-to-day responsibility. And we have our annual board meeting, which is going to happen during this meeting. CAPA, people wonder about CAPA, the California Association of Public Authorities. Basically what that is the executive directors of public authorities get together and they talk about their stuff. SECA is really from the consumer's point of view. CAPA is from the public authority's point of view. There's another organization that is a wonderful organization. It's called the IHSS Coalition. It's had its existence in various forms over the years. This current one got started in 2004, in January 2004, when Arnold Schwarzenegger issued his first proposed budget. And the thinking was that all the people who had anything to do with in-home supportive services needed to get together and work together. We didn't want to have the unions doing one thing, public authorities doing one thing, advisory committees doing another thing. We needed to get everybody under the same umbrella. And so the IHSS Coalition was formed, and I would say that the three big kind of entities in it are CAPA, there's an outfit called Protection and Advocacy, which is a disability rights advocacy group, and the California Foundation of Independent Living Centers, very important, and the unions. The theory was, if we just make this a jobs issue from the unions, then it's easy for the legislature to turn their back. Very, very difficult to turn their back when it's a quality of care issue. And they're talking about people who are their relatives, who are their neighbors and their friends, or their parents, or their kids. Quality of care. So that's what the IHSS Coalition does, and I think it's been wonderfully, wonderfully successful. They have a great website, which I've listed there, and then I've listed some resources for further information. I'm sure I've gone over my time, but I want to invite, I'm going to be here the whole conference. I want to invite you to look back over this stuff. If you have any questions whatsoever, even what feel to be like not very intelligent questions, please come up and talk to me about them. Oh, I have 10 minutes? Okay. Janie tells me I can take 10 minutes worth of questions. Anybody got a question? Let me bring the microphone to you. Okay, the question is, this is, what's your name? Dolly? Okay. So the question is, when you say the county, are you talking about the County Board of Supervisors? Actually, I'm talking about different things. The County Board of Supervisors, of course, it's 5 men and women that are in charge of everything that happens in the county. But I also mean the county administration, so the Department of Social Services or Adult Social Services or whatever. When I talk county, I'm either meaning the Board of Supervisors or the Department of Social Services. When I say the public authority, I'm talking something separate. Wonderful question she asked is, who's my employer? And the thing that's different about this, and I think is confusing to people, is the normal things that you think of as what an employer does are broken down over 4 different entities or individuals. So the county processes the timesheets. The county makes a final approval of the provider. You have to turn in your provider paperwork to the county. The public authority is legally the employer of record. The public authority negotiates with the union, and the public authority signs the contract, the union contract. So that's what the public authority does. And the public authority is who folks come to when they want a referral for a provider. So the public authority has the registry. The state is the employer in the sense that the state takes care of workers' compensation if somebody gets hurt on the job, and they also issue the checks through the state controller. So you get a state check. So there's kind of 4 different people who have employer-like responsibilities in this situation, and that's kind of confusing to people.
John? Didn't they just determine that the consumer is the final authority on the provider?
Another great piece of the question there, and somebody else had their hand up over here. I don't want to ignore you. Okay, I'm coming to you next. Lawrence is asking a different question, like who's my legal employer? But one of the things that the consumer has the right to do, and the responsibility, is you get to hire who you want to help you. And that's a huge, huge thing. I can't make that huge big enough. It's a huge thing about the philosophy, or what we call the independent living philosophy, that you get to choose who's going to take care of you. And that's always a battle because we call that, in shorthand, the social model, where you get to make the choice. The other model is what's called the medical model, which would be like if you're in a nursing home and they decide who comes into your bedroom and feeds you and bathes you and takes care of you. So that's the big thing about the independent thing, is that you get to make that choice. And you get to let that person go. And yes, you're the final authority. I have a question over here, and then this man up in the corner is next, and then I'll come to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Will Scott. I'm with Alameda County Public Authorities, Chairman of the Finance Committee. I was looking on page 7, and it reads that we are newly forming and in the process of seeking a 501c3 status. But then it's a contradiction, because on page 25, it says the seeker established as IRC 501c3. So it does, yeah, and there was one other. So I just wanted to make a distinction,
Okay.
of clarification.
So the history there was written by Nancy Seiden and Bob Roberts. And it was written some years ago when we were in the process of going through the things to become a recognized nonprofit organization.
Okay.
So that's out of date and old.
All right.
The current information is we have
Page
the
25.
letter from the IRS, we have the letter from the State Board of Equalization, we have official bylaws, and we are a California nonprofit corporation. It's all done.
Okay, there was a second one. It says here, page 6, at page 8, on future efforts, number 2, it says, there is a constant real fear that IHSS will take over leadership of the public authorities that disregard the law that specifies public authorities are to be separate entities with employees who are not part of IHSS or the county. I really haven't been aware of anything of that
Well,
nature.
people are talking about, let me just repeat the question quickly there. Now, don't forget, this history was written by 2 individuals. And Bob Roberts was a very impassioned advocate. And so that's part of what Bob Roberts was about. That there's a constant effort to take away this, remember I said this, the social model where you get to choose. There's also been, honestly and frankly, an erosion of this idea that the public authority is separate from the county. So more and more you get public authority duties and public authority people kind of absorbed into counties. And that's not what the statute says. So there is that kind of, things don't stay static.
Right.
But where, like in one county, the public authority director is the same person who's the IHSS director, that type of thing. So you see these things happening all over the place, and that's what Bob Roberts meant right there, that there's a constant effort, which means that you all have to be constantly vigilant, and when you see those advisory committee responsibilities being sort of taken over, or the public authority becoming more and more part of the county, you need to speak up about it, because that's wrong.
Okay.
But it happens.
Thank you. I just needed clarification.
Let's see, I think, did I say I was coming down here next? Okay. How am I doing on time, Jenny? I'm okay?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Michael Eden. I'm with the San Diego County Advisory Board. My question goes to the budget. Who can set the stipend? And then where do we have to